Hello, my name is Len Baer, and today is Sunday, June 4th. It means that we're going to give you another legal update on the historic lawsuit, Targeted Justice v. Garland, that is happening right now in Texas. For those who doesn't know who I am a medical doctor, and I'm a science manager who had to go on disability because of my official diagnosis of Havana Syndrome. I'm also a targeted individual. I'm a part of the advisory board member. I'm a member of an advisory board, for Targeted Justice, which is a nonprofit organization who made this whole legal case happen. And it's been 23 weeks since we filed this lawsuit. And it's coming on half a year. Did you realize that? So time is flying by and we're gaining momentum. And to update us on all things legal, with me today is Anna Toledo, the femme fatale for the targeted individual community. Anna, how are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. I'm happy, delighted to be here again with you. Thank you, Len.
Thank you, Anna. So am I. I am super excited about today's show. And in the guest chair today, we have for the first time, we have a non-TI individual. His name is Steven Craddock, and I have to read this. So he is an up-and-coming writer on Substack, a platform that I love, that really democratized writing. You have people like Matt Taibbi and Seymour Hersh and writers like myself and writers like Steven. It's really an interesting community. People who have something to say coexist on the same platform. And Steven's Substack space is called Thoughts into Words. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Thank you for having me, Len, and thank you, Anna, for having me as well. I'm very excited for our conversation today, Len.
Thank you, Steven. This is a week. You can tell the excitement is in the air. So before we go forward with the update, I will give you a recap of this last week. So during this 22nd week, there was only one filing, and it was done by plaintiff's attorney, meaning Anna Toledo, who filed a judicial notice, basically putting the judge in this case, drawing her attention to the fact that there's an ongoing investigation of these federal agencies happening in Congress, and all three individuals that are defendants that are named defendants in our case are facing articles of impeachment. So that's what happened last week. This week we have I looked at the docket, and there are two filings, and in order to make it more digestible for you, we're going to try to separate them and talk about one of each separately. The first one is a motion to dismiss filed by an attorney for the individual plaintiffs, for the individual defendants. And what I want Anna to explain what this motion says. I want you to explain why there's a different attorney for the individual defendants versus the organization, and what's the difference between those two motions that have been filed on behalf of the organizations and the officers leading those organizations. So please, Anna, explain to us. We're all ears.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the motion to dismiss that was filed this week was filed on behalf of they call it individual capacity defendants. And what that means is that Targeted Justice and the 18 plaintiffs sued Ray, Mayorkas, Weinstein, Cable, and Garland on their official capacity for failing to carry out their duties of their job. Okay, that was the first motion to dismiss that we replied to, which nowhere in the motion to dismiss do they talk about the fact that we asked for a declaratory judgment to have the court declare unconstitutional and illegal the placing of innocent people's names on a terrorist database. They didn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. So that was the first motion to dismiss. The one that we're facing now is the one addressing the individual capacity defendants, who are the same guys, except that it's for the cause of action under the Bivens case. What this means is that Civil Rights Act, which is 42 U.S. Code 1983, it was created to prevent the civil rights violations by officials from states. The corollary, the parallel to that, when a federal agent violates your rights, is called, it was done under a case called Bivens versus 7 unnamed officers. And Bivens basically it's a case law created cause of action against public officials, federal public officials, that violate somebody's civil rights, as in the Fourth Amendment, which is, one of the things that we're alleging here, and the Eighth Amendment, which is, the cruel and unusual punishment, Fourth Amendment being unreasonable searches and seizures. So that's what they answered. And even though they refrained from the pervasive, because they mention it, but only once or twice, the fantastical allegations, now they added a new word, which is bizarre allegations. They refrained from that kind of hate speech. It is no less true that they are alleging, they're implausible. These allegations are implausible. They're just, they're not believable. And therefore, that's their first reason to say that the case should be dismissed, which is the same as the first ones did. And to that, well, what it just jumps at me was that even though they're fantastical and implausible, the government went on to say that the court should not go into the merits of this case because, and I'm going to read, it could set off an inquiry into sensitive issues of national security and call for disclosure of national security information. One of our basic pleadings is that none of the plaintiffs have any derogatory information relating them to terrorism. There is no national security involved here. The TSDB, the Terrorist Screening Database, is not a classified document. It is sent it's sent to over 18,000 law enforcement agencies. The last count we had, it was 1,440 entities and 500, and I think it's 32 or something, biggest private corporations. The last time I checked, the number was something around 74,000. So that's something that we would have to do the discovery. What I'm trying to say is there's nothing classified. There's nothing national security about removing the names of innocent civilians from a terrorist database, particularly when last week we heard and the week before, FBI whistleblowers stating under oath before Congress how the agents are pressured for financial rewards to put innocent civilians to be classified them as domestic terrorists. And what that means really is placing them on the TSDB. That do not be mistaken. When he talks about classifying them as domestic terrorists, it's placing them in this list. This is why this case is not just about targeted individuals. It's about every single American person living, there, you're mowing your lawn, you're happy-go-lucky, and your neighbor disliked what you're doing. If that person has the right connections, you will end up in the TSDB as a domestic terrorist, and your life will be changed forever. So that's one of the things. It's like, nothing to see here. This is implausible. But then they also say that if the court goes into this case, it could be wading into matters of foreign affairs. I don't know how you have a case that there's nothing to from nothing to see here. You jump into matters of public affairs. If it's not that, what we know, that there are 6 million targeted individuals tortured around the world. So I will talk next week about that. They also bring up the immunity defense, which is something that the official capacity defendants wouldn't allege, but the individuals one would, that their actions are covered by immunity. However, I've been studying when I say I work 24/7 on this case, it's a little bit of an exaggeration because I sleep, but even in my sleep, I'm thinking about this case. And one of the research I've been doing is, at the founding, the immunity was only available to officials that either acted pursuant to an order of the Justice of the Peace or pursuant to a statute. You have none of this here. Here you have a Homeland Security presidential directive that says that you can only place terrorists in that database. And we know that there are hundreds of thousands and millions of innocent people in that list that don't meet the terrorist criteria. So, and that, as you well know, the FBI representative submitted a sworn statement saying that it was for confidential criteria that they are placed there, which is completely illegal under under the American system of law. So next week I will talk about the reply that we'll be filing, because I hope to file it before next Sunday, because we're and I want to tell targeted individuals out there, the criminals are jacking up the attacks, particularly on those of you that are so brave, that are denouncing out there in social media, and that are making your voice heard. You are the target of more heinous attacks, and I know it, and I'm desperate because we filed this in January 11, and I know that you all are suffering a lot. But I want you to know that even though I'm happy, I'm really happy today, and I'll have to talk about why I'm so happy. We also suffer. So I want you to please hold on, because the reason why you're being attacked is because you're being effective. It's because you're a failed experiment. Now, as you know, Len, this morning we woke up that they had brought down the Targeted Justice webpage. And this is one of the things that, obviously, who would be interested in putting it down, in bringing it down, except for the people that are feeling the heat, And as an attorney, whenever I got a case about whatever, I would ask my client all the time, like we discussed this last week, did you do this? And he's like, yeah, okay, well, let's stop doing it. Stop doing it right now, because there's a duty to mitigate damages, and there's a duty as an attorney for me to say, I don't want to hear that you're continuing doing this kind of thing. Today's hacking is evidence that, this has got to stop. Truth is going to come out no matter how much you hack, no matter how much you hurt. And the thing is this, as targeted individuals, we know we are used to getting our things broken, and we build them back again. And that's what they cannot stand. The fact that we get up again and and we recreate ourselves and reconstruct ourselves. And that's what we're going to do. Yeah, you brought down our page. We will redo it. Don't, give us a little time. But that will not change the truth. And that is that they are sweating bullets because of this. I know that you want to talk about the filing I did this week, because, the Supreme Court has recognized that publishing a name as a terrorist or a suspected terrorist and disseminating to third parties, it's presumed to cause damage and to grant the injury, in fact, that they are denying us. Okay. So I wanted to say, I should be sad. I should be worried about the fact that they brought down our page, but no, I am rejoicing because I know that they are desperate. And that makes me very happy. I wanted to thank, before we do the, the housekeeping things, I wanted to thank those sentinels out there that are helping us, because there's people helping us from the inside, and we just want you to take care of yourselves and make sure that you obviously, you don't get caught. And we thank you and we honor you, and we know you are helping us, and we thank you, because this probably wouldn't have been possible but for your help. You gave us a push, a very important push, and we urge you to continue helping us. This next Saturday, well, we'll do the housekeeping at the end. But anyways, so do you have any questions, Len?
I certainly do. I read the motion to dismiss from the individuals, from the attorney representing the individuals versus the agencies, and every time I read, something just jumps at me. And this time, what really jumped at me is that every time they use the phrase directed energy weapon, they used it in quotation marks. Every time they used a phrase voice to skull, they put quotation marks. So, but we know, so to me, that means that it is alleged directed energy weapons, but we know that they are real. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of government documents seriously discussing directed energy weapons without any quotation mark. These are real weapons. And the same voice to skull, that's that term itself was it first appeared on the either DARPA website or U.S. Armed Forces Laboratories. This is where the term came from. And so all of a sudden, we see the same terms in quotation marks. So my question is, are you saying they're not real? And if you're saying it in this filing, what are we supposed to think about all the other government documents? Are you misleading us now, or are you misleading us in the other documents? That's what jumped at me, and I'd really like to hear your comments about this, Anna.
Well, yeah, because I think that quotation marks have a purpose of inserting the fantastical narrative into the motion without saying so. But here's the thing, you are one of the plaintiffs, and you have Havana Syndrome, and the National Academies of Science and Engineering have said that you get a Havana Syndrome because you get directed energy pulsed. I don't know, you're the expert on the term, but directed energy weapons attacks, right? So it's in Latin, it's called res ipsa loquitur, which is the thing speaks for itself. If you have Havana Syndrome, the only thing that caused it, said by the National Academies of Science and Engineering, is directed energy weapons. So, so in that sense, they are trying to say it's fantastical, except that there are mountains of scientific evidence documenting its reality. The same with B2K. There is a patent for it. There have been books written on it, and they acknowledge that they have used it in wars, like Operation Desert Storm. That's how they got the soldiers of the enemy combatants to put down their weapons, because they were B2King them, allies telling you to put them down. And this, Ana Toledo didn't make this up. This is historical. So to do that, it's a little condescending, but it's expected. One thing that should jump out at you is that from saying that we're alleging that, they said we don't allege it, but then they say we do, allege, the plaintiffs do allege it, that they are erroneously placed in the TSCB. And because of that, they are attacked with due. But the thing is that they are missing the thing in the middle, which is they are placed there and they shouldn't be placed there because they're innocent civilians. And that is their glaring omission that they don't want to discuss because they know it's highly illegal and there is no reason for it other than what has been alleged in the complaint, that this is part of a heinous human experiment program. There is no reason to swell the list of the terrorist database, except if there was a financial incentive, like the FBI people, whistleblowers testified. So to me, I think it's obvious that they're just trying to ignore the elephant in the living room. You know, I wanted to talk about, if it's okay with you, the motion we filed this week. We filed a motion asking for the court. You know, I even apologized at the end because I know that the court has a lot of pending motions, but I need to convey the urgency because there's too many people suffering out there, and I want you all to know how frustrated I am that I have tried to convey it in so many ways, and I don't know if the message is getting through. But so I filed this motion requesting for the court to take judicial notice of this case, that I urge you to look at the Substack newsletter this week, Targeted Justice, for all of this, particularly because today of the hacking of the webpage. I urge you all, it's free. Subscribe to Targeted Justice Substack newsletter. It's free, and that's the way to keep up to date and know about news, you know, before, you know, we meet here on Sundays, things that are going on. And also, you know, there's the motion that I filed this week was included in the Substack newsletter, and basically the Supreme Court has stated, you know, has pretty much stated that placing people, the harm from being labeled a potential terrorist bears close relationship to the harm from being labeled a terrorist. In other words, from the harm from a misleading statement of this kind bears a sufficiently close relationship to the harm from a false and defamatory statement. And this was a class action where some customers of TransUnion were flagged as terrorists and were denied in their credit reports. And that information was sent to third parties, which is, you know, what is done with us and, you know, with my plaintiffs here. And what I have to bring it to the attention of the court, because it's pretty much, it does away with the argument that the 18 plaintiffs and Targeted Justice doesn't have standing because there's no injury in fact, because this case clearly states there is injury in fact when you label someone a terrorist and they're not a terrorist, and you send it to third parties, as we have alleged in the complaint. So those are the two filings for this week. I think that if we weren't being on the winning side, they wouldn't have hacked our page today. And they, you know, Len, and that our privileged attorney-client communications are constantly hacked, and my computer is constantly hacked too. So I have nothing to hide, but that is illegal. It's in violation of the Fourth Amendment, and I really urge whoever is doing it to stop doing it, because immunity doesn't go that far. I only have one more announcement I'd like to make, which is that this Saturday is this coming Saturday, the 10th, is the monthly Targeted Justice meeting at 9 a.m. At the Onion Creek Cafe in Houston, and at 1 p.m. Okay, June 10th. Actually, I'm not sure if it's 2 p.m. or 1 p.m. Subscribe or to Targeted Justice in Twitter. I'm going to have a Spanish update of the lawsuit for Spanish-speaking people. Para todas las personas que hablan español y no entienden las complicaciones de lo que estoy diciendo en inglés, Este sábado, apúntense con Targeted Justice and Twitter. We're going to have a space, a Twitter space, and we're going to talk in Spanish. I'm going to talk in Spanish, and we're going to receive questions in Spanish about the lawsuit. Okay, so it'll probably go on for as long as people have questions, and it's going to be simultaneous. What we're going to try to do is simultaneous with a call. So it's a TI call and a Twitter space. We're going to see, it's the first time we do this. So, bear with us if there are any snafus, but we're going to be there to answer questions in Spanish. So I think that's all I had to say for now.
All right, Anna, thank you. Thank you for covering that second motion that you filed this week, because that was my sort of second portion of this week's news. You file a second judicial notice motion despite and you, just like you said, you even had to apologize. I apologize, Judge, that I am drawing your attention just another time, but it's too important to miss. And this case, the TransUnion case, is extremely important to this, to our case. The similarities are just critical. And my only question, since you already covered it, my only question is, how recent is this Supreme Court ruling? Has it been, is it just this year, or how old is it?
Well, it was 2021. And I have to tell you, it came up because I was reading about, I'm constantly researching, constantly in anticipation of what's coming. And it came up as not followed, like the case I was reading had not been followed by this case. So I clicked on that case because when I do research, since my computer is highly compromised, despite having hired IT people, but, criminals get to them, so this case hadn't come up. And the reason why I brought the attention to the court is because it does away with so many of the, potential controversies, because it pretty much, the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land, what the Supreme Court says. And that's how it just, I came across it because I was doing research. It is my duty as an attorney to bring to the court everything that is relevant to its decision. And I just asked that she take judicial notice of it in support of the motion, in the opposition to the motion to dismiss that I had already filed. So it's like a supplement to it that I added it. It wasn't arguing anything different. It was just in support of what I had already stated, saying, look, what I stated, the Supreme Court already said it's a real damage, telling people that an innocent person is a terrorist and spreading it to third parties. The Supreme Court already adjudicated that.
That is really interesting. So this Supreme Court decision has been around since 21. Now it's 2023, and the highest court in the country could not have been more clear about this, and yet we're still reading these arguments in the motion to dismiss that completely disregard the Supreme Court's decision. And that just boggles my mind. I don't understand how these things are happening at the same time, but yet here we are.
Well, it also, Glenn, it tells you this decision is almost 2 years old. It also tells you this, that even though this decision was in the books, FBI continued to put innocent civilians in a terrorist list, even though the Supreme Court of the land had said that it causes damages to people. So you can conclude they have done it intentionally, knowingly that these people are not terrorists, but also knowing that the Supreme Court has held it causes the damages are presumed. And that goes to the punitive aspect that we're asking and that we will be asking for in this case, because they continue doing it despite a specific holding saying that it causes damages.
Thank you, Anna, for this clarification. Now it's time to speak to our special guest, Steven Craddock. Steven, I'm a fan of your work. I am absolutely, I admire everything you write. I have to read this. You describe yourself as an inspiring writing with a pro-liberty slant, providing commentaries on politics, culture, current events, and anything else worth writing about, with the intention to shed light on the stories corporate media might overlook or represent. And this is a great model, I think, that you found. I cannot recommend your Substack highly enough. One of your most recent publications describes this colossal shift in the media. It's a two-part writing that I had to read it twice. It was so helpful to me to understand that what's happening in the society and what's happening in the media, all these shifts, they're all interconnected, and you really put it in the right words. Now I understand. I have a better understanding of what's going on, and I recommend everybody reads it. It's extremely useful. Full disclosure, Steven is not or does not consider himself a targeted individual. And that makes Steven's perspective even more valuable. So Steven, please tell us what led to this moment. Tell us the story, how we met, how you decided to write about certain things. The stage is yours, please.
Well, thank you, Len. And first of all, thank you for all those kind words. I really appreciate it. So yeah, as you said, I'm not a targeted individual. And I honestly didn't even really believe that Havana Syndrome was all that real, because I wrote two pieces about it. The first one, there was a recent intelligence report on Havana Syndrome, and it basically concluded that it wasn't due to a foreign government using a directed energy weapon. And my skepticism of Havana Syndrome was that I'd only heard of CIA agents and US diplomats, getting a headache, and then they would blame Russia or China or Cuba, and all those countries fall outside of the US centralized empire. And so I just saw it as propaganda against those countries. And now, it was right before the whole Russiagate debacle that has been debunked over and over again. And now we're currently fighting a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. So it just seemed like propaganda to kind of, manufacture consent for those kind of things. But then, so I wrote a piece basically saying that, and basically saying, look, even they have to admit now that they don't really have the evidence they're claiming. But then, Len, you reached out to me, you responded to my article on Twitter, basically saying that, you are a civilian who's been diagnosed with Havana Syndrome, and you're the first civilian I'd ever heard of to be diagnosed with Havana Syndrome. And looking into you, kind of opened up the broader targeted individual community, and I'd never really heard of that, either. So then me and you got in touch, and we had a Zoom call, and we discussed, your story and background. And I used that conversation to write a follow-up piece about the civilian cases. Now my perspective is because the historical precedent of, our government, experimenting on civilians unwittingly, it's not like that's never happened before. There's plenty of historical precedent for that. And so now I think that maybe, that's most likely what is going on. And they still, tried to blame Russia and other countries like that to manufacture that consent. But it was also, I think, maybe to steer people, anyone interested in this subject, steer them away from looking at our own government and what they might be involved in, and blame a foreign government instead. And so that's kind of where my perspective went to, and where it currently is now. So yeah, that's kind of the story of where those two articles came from, and the evolution of my perspective on all this.
Yes, thank you, Steven. I was very impressed by the way you responded to my tweets and my claims. That was a much more credible and intelligent and consistent than responses from most of the journalists who work for the mainstream media were. Because I basically my day starts by checking all the media outlets. Is there anything new about Havana Syndrome? And everybody who has ever written a word about it receives a letter, a tweet, a direct message from me. They hear from me. That became my second nature. And the way you responded was just I would call it excellence in journalism. And I'm not exaggerating. I think you really show people who pride themselves in calling themselves journalists, but then they don't do the homework. But you did, and I applaud that. Applaud you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would classify most of my writing as more commentary, but I do appreciate that. And that piece did take a little bit longer than most of my pieces, so I did put a little bit more work into my follow-up piece on Havana Syndrome than most of my other ones. So I do appreciate that.
Steven, what do you think about this legal case that we're covering? We're having these weekly updates. You just heard our conversation with Anna. Do you have any questions for Anna or myself with respect to this legal case?
I'm not sure that I have any questions. I think Anna laid it all out pretty well. I'm not a targeted individual, and I'm not a legal expert, so I don't want to comment too much on the ins and outs of that, just because I'd be out of my depth. But I do want to say that how they were classifying these claims as implausible. I just find that ridiculous, because, like I stated before, there's legal precedent for our government doing this kind of non-consensual experimentation. And I obviously you need, there needs to be some hard evidence, that's not like, you can just make claims and you need something to back them up. But I think there's plenty of historical precedent to at least get people interested in the topic and to entertain the idea. So implausible is just such a condescending term to use for that. Then they claim, it's a matter of national security. That's their go-to when they don't want to release information, right? When Edward Snowden released the NSA documents, that's what they claimed, that he was damaging national security. Same with Julian Assange. They have him locked up in Belmarsh because he exposed U.S. war crimes, but it was a matter of national security, so he needs to be prosecuted. So those would be my two comments on what Anna was saying. I find it very condescending to treat it just so, just brush it off like there's no reality there.
Thank you, Steven. You actually took words out of my mouth, because if you read one of my Substacks, when I read the first motion to dismiss filed by the attorney for the agencies, I said, condescension. This is the strategy of the government. They can't dismiss the claims, so they condescend toward the targeted individuals. It borderlines hate speech, basically. The tone and the phrases they use, it really borderlines hate speech, because we we do identify as a group. So if you say that this group makes fantastical allegations that do not need to be taken seriously, that's exactly that. Steven, I know that you will get a lot of interest in your Substack. Tell us what are other things you're looking at, what interests you, what catches your attention. I will be following you regardless, but give us a preview of what's going on through your head.
Well, I don't have any new articles currently in the works. This next week is when I'm gonna, probably by next weekend, I'll have one out, but I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna write about yet. My latest piece was, it was called Summits and Secrecy, and it was about, there was the G7 summit and the Arab League summit and the Bilderberg meeting all in the same weekend. And just these, you know, summits and meetings where these rich and powerful and, you know, leaders in government and, you know, corporate and just finance, just, you know, all the most powerful people in the world, where they gather together and they kind of talk and they shape the world that we all live in. But my piece was basically making the case that no one really gives those meetings as much attention as they deserve. And I think a lot of that is because it's often boring and just kind of, you know, if you're not constantly listening and involved in politics, it's just kind of the average person, their eyes, they just gloss over when they have to hear, you know, a million politicians just speak over and over again. But in these meetings, they you know, announce certain things and they push certain agendas where it really does have an effect on the rest of us. And I think that just gets, you know, overlooked far too often, especially the Bilderberg group, because that for a long time, if you even mentioned anything about it, you were considered a conspiracy theorist, you know, like, oh, that's not anything important. But it's a secret meeting. They don't allow the media to go in and report on it. And it's all the most powerful people you could imagine. And what are they saying in that meeting? No one really knows, and too many people don't really care. So that was my latest piece. And like I said, I'm not really sure what I'm writing about this week, but I'm hoping to have something out next weekend. So to anyone interested, just watch for that. And hopefully by next Saturday, I'll have a new article out. So that's what I would have to say about that.
Great. Excellent. Steven, keep us keep the suspension up. And we'll follow your work. I think what you're doing is extremely valuable. You make those connections that an average person would not make, and you bring it to everybody to read and digest. And that's what we need. We need a public conversation about things that we're really not speaking about. And targeted individual issue is one of them. Do you have any final words for your subscribers, listeners, people out there? Something that some words of wisdom, Steven?
Some words of wisdom. I would say just be open to possibilities, and especially when the corporate media is trying to sweep something under the rug, that's when you really should try to pay attention to what it is. I would be skeptical of some alternative media as well. Sometimes you can get some scam artists or some people that are just they don't really know what they're talking about. They just kind of go a little too far out there, but I wouldn't let that deter you from looking into some stories that the corporate media tries to act like you just shouldn't pay attention to. So I think that would be what I left with. And I would just end by saying, thank you again for all your compliments, Len, and thank you to both you and Anna for inviting me to come talk with you guys today. And I really enjoyed myself. So thank you, Len.
You're most welcome, Steven. Anna, any words of wisdom from you at the end of our show?
I thank you, Steven, and we're gonna link his column. I'm gonna ask Richard to link it to the Targeted Justice Substack column, and so that the readers can have access to it. He's so very right. And as Steven, you should know that there has been a complete absence of coverage of this, groundbreaking lawsuit in the corporate, mainstream media, and even in the alternative media, because I think that, the people involved are pressuring people not to cover this important case. In Spanish, we had in Puerto Rico, there was, I don't know if you had it in the United States too, that Panasonic had an ad, a commercial that said, anticipating the future. And that's exactly what we did when we filed the lawsuit. We filed a lawsuit, and the three people that we had, alleged were part of this program, an intricate part of this program. They happened to be the ones that a week and a half ago are the objects of articles of impeachment. I think that media should pay closer attention to this case, because it's so much more important than I can say. I cannot say how probably at the Bilderberg Club they were talking about this case. And I know that there are very important minds looking at it, but not talking about it because they're not allowed to, or they're afraid to do so. So, that's what I have to say. We are making history, and we are moving the tracks of history in a more positive direction of where they were going. We're moving this train in a better direction of where it was going. And I'm just so proud and so happy to be part of it, and to have you, Len, in this team, and the courageous targeted individuals, as I call them, the failed experiments to plagiarize another TI's Voice to Skull that insulted her, calling her a failed experiment. I am proud of my failed experiments. I am happy that you have made me part of your family. And I am just so looking forward to winning this and getting freedom in 2023. I really am. Thank you, Len.
Thank you for this message of hope, Anna. I also have just a few words to say at the end of the show. It's officially summertime, and our front yard is green and beautiful, and we live in a very nice suburban neighborhood. People are friendly to each other. People say hi. And in the middle of our front yard, there's a huge sign that is impossible to ignore. It says targetedjustice.com. So every neighbor and every car passing by will see this sign. And even if just 5% of these people, just out of curiosity, go and check out the website, obviously, when it's back up, I would say mission accomplished. We are gaining the visibility. We are no longer a fringe group. We are at the moment when we're impossible to ignore. The evidence is overwhelming. The evidence that we've been designated a life of suffering and torture and brain degradation. And that's all happening on your taxpayers' money. And as well as mine. Like, I'm paying for my own torture. And we all have to ask ourselves, is this okay? Or does it have to stop immediately? Thank you for watching. Goodbye.